Okay, I think all of the speakers are here. Gopi will be joining in a little late. So let's begin. Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to this evening's program, participatory workshop. It's really nice to have all of you taking your time off on a Sunday evening to attend this one. At the outset, I would like to thank the speakers who've agreed to be our resource persons for the day, you all participants, sign language interpreters, Mr. Arun C. Rao and Ms. Preeti Sapra. And I'd like to thank Dr. Shubha Ranganathan, who's my supervisor. Unfortunately, she's not able to join, but her support has always been there throughout. My name is Chetan, and I'm a PhD student in psychology and disability studies at the Department of Liberal Arts, IIT Hyderabad. And this workshop is part of my doctoral work. And before we begin, the entire discussion, I'll just introduce to you all what this workshop is and give you a couple of housekeeping rules as well. I'll begin with the housekeeping rules. Please turn off your videos and keep your mics on mute so that you can only see the speaker's video and the sign language interpreters. We have accessibility in terms of sign language interpreters. You can turn on the closed captions for subtitles in case there's any difficulty with the accent. Wherever there are images, we'll try to describe that as well for you all. We will have the Q&A at the end of the workshop today because it shouldn't disrupt the flow of thoughts of the speaker and everyone gets enough time to talk. During the Q&A, you're free to unmute yourselves and ask questions. You can type the questions on the chat box as well. And since this is mostly for inclusion, mostly for acceptance, mostly for awareness on learning disabilities, let's all be kind and sensitive to the language that we use with one another. Right? I'll introduce the workshop. So when we say participatory workshop, what does that really mean? Now, this is titled Learning Disability Advocacy, a participatory workshop. So participatory workshop is basically a component of the participatory research design where it's bringing people together to seek their opinions, knowledge, and to understand something in a collaborative and creative environment. Now, the speakers here are core researchers. They are resource persons as well as research interlocutors. Now, this workshop is a result of consultation and knowledge sharing that began in August 2023, where we all discussed, what to do, how to do, and what will be the outcome. So this is one of the outcomes, the workshop, and the other one is probably a possibility of a paper. Right? Now, when we look at participatory research, right? So one of the things that concerns is ethics, because in traditional research, we abide by ethical principles of confidentiality and anonymity. However, here the research participants are co-researchers speaking about themselves as self-advocates. Right? So the thing is that here we are using ethics in a contextual approach. We are using confidentiality and anonymity in a contextual approach because we've understood from different research paradigms that confidentiality and anonymity are very important and they do serve certain purposes, but at the same time, they can also hinder certain things. Now, for example, anonymity and confidentiality in certain research can reinforce stigma, can negate authentic representations, right? So from that perspective, here, self-advocates talking about themselves is a way to destigmatize, is a way to foster more inclusion and to allow authentic representation, right? So that's one of the important points that I wanted to make. Like I said, what is this workshop about? What is it not about? This workshop is about authentic representation. It's about learning from each other. It's about bringing together unique experiences and attempting to bring a positive change in the way we understand learning disability or dyslexia. What is it not about? This workshop is not about trivializing the speaker's experiences or drawing blanket statements and overgeneralizations, and it is not about monetizing the experiences, right? So, with this brief background, I'll move on to the advocacy part of the workshop. Right now, what does advocacy really mean? In the traditional sense, it is talking about rights of people, various groups, and here within the context of disability. And it can be done in different forms. It comes in different shapes and sizes and forms. In this workshop, we are looking at advocacy in terms of um, you know experiences of our speakers, the neurodivergent experiences, and how these experiences shape our understanding, how they inform us about the rights of people with learning disabilities, about the different kinds of inclusions and accommodations that can be made in different contexts, and about the way we can be more inclusive. Okay? So, why this workshop? Now, we are doing this workshop at a time when we are embracing the concept of neurodiversity. Right? Now, neurodiversity basically refers to acknowledging differences. We are all different, yes, but acknowledging the difference and not attributing that to a pathology or a deviation from the normative notions, but rather as a variation and how they intersect with different other factors. Right? Now, this helps us to move from a deficit-based approach to learning disabilities to more of strength and contextual-based approaches. Because traditionally, learning disability or dyslexia has been viewed as a neurodevelopmental disorder from a lot of medical understanding that there is something wrong with you and you need to be fixed. Right? So we are changing that notion from that to yes, there are challenges, and those challenges can be looked at from also the environmental support, right? The way our systems can provide support can make a lot of difference in the way we understand learning disabilities as well. Right? And another important reason for why we're doing this is also looking at disability research with the participants. Nothing without us about us. So it's not only inclusion for the sake of inclusion, but also gaining knowledge, gaining perspectives from people with their lived experiences and looking at it critically and contextualizing it. Right? And finally, also understanding these perspectives and providing a space where we can all share our experiences that sort of go beyond the binaries of superhero or supercrip narratives. Right? Superhero narratives is that a person with disability may have some other extraordinary ability to compensate for that, or a supercrip is a person with disability cannot do anything. Right? So it's also a way to debunk certain myths related to learning disability, dyslexia, because our society places excessive emphasis on academic achievement, and we do see how strengths can be captured and fostered. And we can see how there's so much more to learning disability than just the academic struggles. Right? So with this brief introduction, I would now like to ask the participants to have the speakers. I mean have the speakers with us. But before that, let me also give you a heads up about what this workshop will entail. So I'll just read out the line of speakers so you all know who's going to talk about what and when. We first have Aditya Bharadwaj talking about self-advocacy. And we have Puneet Singh after that, who will talk about assessment and diagnostic experiences, followed by Shreya, who will talk about home and family environment. So after these three sessions, we will have a short break for about 10 minutes. And after the break, we will have the second panel with Pratik, talking about school and college experiences, followed by Priyank, talking about understanding strengths and fostering them, and then Parikshith, talking about tech tools and environmental support. We will again have a short break for 10 minutes, after which we will have Gopi Venugopal talking about workplace and DI. And then we will have enough time for Q&A. So each speaker will get about 15 to 20 minutes time to talk. And I will be keeping time. This is for the speakers. By the end of 15 minutes, I will remind you so that you can wrap your talk up. So We will have the entire speakers talk first, and then we will take the Q&A at the end, and we can have a fruitful discussion at this. So I think I'll now call our first speaker, Aditya. Um, Aditya, hope you're here.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you can turn on your video. Thanks, Aditya.
Yeah.
I'll introduce Aditya. Aditya is a 23-year-old BA graduate, Bengaluru with a dysgraphia and about a year of work experience. He has been a self-advocate and taken part in many discussions. So welcome, Aditya. Thank you so much for agreeing to be the speaker for today's event. Over to you.
Thank you. Um, so, um, 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 uh, Please forgive me. I tend to stutter. Um, so, to me, I think if we just go chronologically, advocating for oneself, for myself, has been um, an issue of feeling sort of um, independent, and um, uh, it has allowed me to um, it has allowed me to uh, really it has allowed me to not only sort of um, describe uh, what it's like to be with to have a disability, but also it's really it's allowed me to um, just by the sort of just in the act of doing so, it's allowed me to have these like almost magical interactions wherein I could simply tell someone that I, as a person with dyslexia, um, do not have any um, like just the fact that I am not the same as a person with intellectual disabilities, describing my experience in that way, right, has in itself led to um, people going down these rabbit holes, metaphorical rabbit holes of discovery of neurodivergence. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to learn in that particular sphere. So, but the ability to actually see that. Sort of light being sort of like lit up, so to speak, that interest being shown. So I would say that um, I mean, not to toot my own, actually, I'm not, not even to not toot my own horn, so to speak, but I feel like just pretty much from the time I've been diagnosed, I have been, whether intentionally or unintentionally, engaging in self advocacy. Um, Not just in the sense that when I'm in class, like when I was in class, when I was in the Brindavan Education Trust, right, their school. um, it's not just that when I was there, like we would have these like sessions wherein we could write to um, uh, like larger media houses and whatnot. I don't quite recall. I was quite young the first time that happened. Mm. so I can't really give too many proper noun examples for that particular phenomenon. But also, just the fact that I could say, "Oh, I went to this place. Is that not a special needs school?" I'd say yes, it's a special needs school, but there's nothing like strange about it. You're not entering into the X-Men's Charles Xavier's uh, like school for the gifted, and then you enter and people are like throwing are doing the Rain Man thing where they throw them are doing Rain Man things, and there's like it's not like that. It was normal to the point that honestly I think most people would find it, most people who are really who only would have heard about places like special schools that help for special needs, schools that help out help educate people with special needs, and other such institutions. It is so different from their preconceived notions that that in itself, to show that 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 while being disabled is an important part of my personality, it is not the only part of my personality. That in itself, I feel is like an act of self advocacy. And then, so yes, I would say that my journey sort of began there. So even though formally I would say it only began a few years ago, started off there, and then after that. Basically all through my primary and secondary schooling, I was able to um, uh, 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 I was able to through everything from field trips to to sort of desensitization of my own to differences, because one thing that I feel one gift that I feel that being in a being in a special school gave me, that I didn't really talk about, and that's why and I feel like this one had all of my classmates also been in quote unquote mainstream schools, and had they been accommodated, this is something that I feel that more people could get, right? Is you're just desensitized to to behavior patterns and to um, ways of thinking that are very different from your own. So um, so the fact that um, like when I was waiting at the when I was like say when I was waiting in line for my disability certificate, if a child if I noticed a child having a difficult time due to sensory issues, or if I noticed someone behavior whose behavior was out of the norm, I wouldn't be like this one made to I wouldn't feel afraid or freaked out, and they would look at me, and they'd see that this this piece of documentation for which they sort of one person actually told me this. It's during my internship in Rajasthan. Basically, essentially when they before it was something, the experience was something tinged with a feeling of discomfort, in the sense of, am I the kind of person who has to come here? But then when they would see just like this very quote unquote normal looking person, they'd be reminded that, oh right, this is just a bureaucratic formality that that I would do in any place. If I had to go to a government hospital or a government office, I would have to do similar formalities, and then the that whole thought would leave them. People step. No, no, no big deal. Like that's legitimately something, and that feels so empowering, and then finally when I got to um, the point where I was able to attend my first self advocacy event um, as a speaker. um, it was on another level. I must say, the endorphin rush itself, of being able to say that I am, being able to say that I am a person with disabilities, but that doesn't mean that there's that's the only thing about me. And to actually hear that just accidentally, just by describing my just by describing how things, how life is for me, right? I would be like accidentally debunking myths. That's very powerful. So self advocacy to me is um, uh, like empowering myself, right? So yeah, that and so as a result, after my initial self advocacy sort of talk that I gave, which again, if I'm not wrong, which was held by Mitra for Life and Vrindavan Education Trust, I got the I was sort of bitten by the metaphorical bug, and I really started to come out of my shell. And um, like right now as well, I feel empowered. Like I know that I'm talking to a lot of people with different sets of ideas, and everything. So the and after my internship in Rajasthan, which was in an inclusive which was in an inclusive school, now I feel like I've grown even more. And I feel that that need for self advocacy has grown even more within me. And yeah, that would be all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. It was very interesting that you pointed out how, self advocacy for you is empowering, and just describing your lived experiences is a form of advocacy, and also acknowledging disability identity, but not as the only identity. That's, I think, very important. And also normalizing the experiences of special school was really something that was a takeaway for me. Thanks so much, Aditya, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
Um, shall we now move on to the next speaker? Or
Mm.
right, we now have Puneet Singh. Um, Puneet, yeah, yeah, thanks. I can see you now. I was just looking for where you were, whether your video was on or not. Thanks. So, Puneet is going to be talking about assessment and diagnostic experiences. Let me introduce Puneet to all of you. Puneet Singh is a disability inclusion advocate and an accessibility professional. He's a person with dyslexia, dysgraphia, and stammering. Dyspraxia. He's building a global network of young persons with disabilities and providing capacity building, educational, employment, and other resources to empower the community. Um, Thanks so much for taking your time off and agreeing to speak today. Over to you, Puneet.
Thank you so much, Chetan, for this opportunity, and uh, uh, my regards to to all the listeners who have given us their time in the weekend. That is very kind of you. And when I'm a disability right activist, so like I talk about disability, I talk about our rights 24/7, and it's my job. And but still, like, this topic is somehow makes me very uncomfortable because of what experience and uh, what I have to go through while assessing myself, while try to diagnose myself, which is, I would say, which is a very basic right. everyone has should have this thing, to know themselves better. And for like me, for like for around my teenage, I was all thinking that I'm the only one like who is going through all of these challenges, and that's scary, that there is no one else and to whom to talk. So I think that made me very kind of uh, I would say curious, that I want to know more. I want to know people who are going through these challenges, and that has made me like uh, I I got a job, a very decent job. And for someone like me who have born in a slum with an abusive father, like getting a good job, and that financial security was the best thing, was nothing best. But when I decided to go and pursue activism, to advocate for equal rights for people with disabilities, I think that was my purpose, that was my call. And still, like, I lot of people know me, lot of I receive lot of messages uh, from across the globe, from youngsters, from adults, from everyone, like who has like who has got some courage, some kind of hope because of my activism on a global level. But then when I went to, like, when I decided that I want to have a diagnosis, and when then I went to the professional, uh, he asked me few details, and then he said uh, that you're doing so well in your life, why do you want to have this diagnosis, and what's the need? Like, he was unable, and let me tell you, he's a very well known professional in Delhi, like one of the best. So I'm getting to hear such such a thing from him. It take me aback. I was little shocked. And then and it is, let me tell you, it is no different from my mom, who used to always say that, that's, you're fine, and you, like, nothing's wrong with you. You just, you just do a little bit more hard work, focus more, and you will ultimately try to learn, like, you will be, like, you will be good. That's just kind of dismissive, but I know that is coming from a place of care, a place of love, and also what we have been conditioned through the society. That kind of, we talk about ableism, we talk about uh, the uh, the discrimination, the exclusion, all of these things. But from my mom, like, I can understand she's not like, she's not aware, she's not sensitive about these issues, and she had been, like, listening to all these neighbors and relatives, that I think there is, like, your son is like that, your son is like that. So all of these things have made her little unaware, like, it's none of her fault. But when I hear all of these things from my professional, who is doing like, whose job is to actually assess people and diagnose people, that that was something uh, i I cannot process, even yet. And because the process of diagnosis, as the my previous speaker was talking about, it's about identifying yourself. It's about that love that you deserve, and which we, like, uh, we as disabled individuals forget sometimes. And we need to, like, keep reminding ourselves, despite all of these incidents that is happening all around us. And and in India, like, we have also, like, some religious and social things that is around disability. And and I was thinking that, that maybe somewhere in the West things are good. But when I met people from the West, and we were talking about all of these challenges around diagnosis, around disclosure, and in the workplace, in the family, the whole point of having a caregiver, all of these things. Like it's I would say whole our whole humankind is far behind. No one is doing a lot better. Maybe Europe and US have good compliances, have good laws in place. Still, I see a lot of similar things happening around the world, and I think we need to talk more about it. We need to like normalize talking about diagnosis, talking about the right to know and identify ourselves. And the more we talk with, the more people will come out, and that's how we normalize things. Like that's how we we make people realize that it's okay. It's completely okay, and it's needless to say, but it's completely okay to have disabilities. But it's not so okay when you're denied the right to get diagnosed. So I think that's I would say the whole point behind me wanted to talk about diagnosis, because I think that's the first time I'm talking about this issue uh, uh, in my 3-4 years of activism. And I would say I would like to talk more about it. And if someone is like um, going through similar challenges, I think sharing is important. I think but we need to make sure that we have a safe space. We have people who are understanding, whom we can trust, whom like they are sensitive enough and sensible enough to actually empathize with the challenges that we go through uh, while while the process of getting diagnosed. And when Chetan was giving me giving us the topics like to choose from, I think that I immediately like wanted to talk about assessment and diagnosis, because it's not well discussed. It's still kind of a taboo, even in what we call in the professional expert world. They're still taking it as in a medical a model of disability, that that we need to like fixed. And if we just don't, if we're doing well in our career, if we are doing well in our life, I think that's that's should not that should not complement with your disability. But I think it's not true. We can live our lives, we can enjoy our lives with disability. Yeah, there must be more challenges which we can work upon with the help of our civil societies, with the help of our society, with the help of governments, with all the educational institutions and big corporate, like wherever we are working, wherever we are studying. I think with their support, uh, things can be changed. And I would say if we talk more and more, we will get out of this tokenism as well, because a lot of people, lot of organizations just give it a shot, give it one off kind of this the kind of event, that that we are doing this for inclusion, we are doing for this diversity, all of these things. But actually when we make it inculcate in our daily lives, then also then only the real change will happen. So for that, we need to self advocate. It's not an easy thing. It's certainly very, very difficult. It took me a whole lot of self care. It took me a whole lot of uh, I would say realization that I'm not alone. And if I'm advocating for self love, I'm also aware of the challenges. I'm also aware of what can happen wrong, like what can go wrong. And that we need to think about, that we need to think about as a society. And like this kind of platforms where we have a kind of assurance, a kind of safe space, and these kind of spaces are needed so that people can talk freely about the emotional turmoil they go through, and especially like in the settings of hospitals and clinics and all these professional settings that even like they are not sensitized enough, and that is problematic, like uh, uh, that makes us realize that we need to like look at the way how experts are being trained, being I think training would be a little, I do not use words like training, but how they are sensitized, how they look at us, how they look at us as patient, as someone who are who are in need to be fixed, or do they look at us as human beings? So I think that is very imperative. It's very obvious, and it's on our face, like it's need of the hour to self advocate, but with lot of precautions, with lot of do's and don'ts. And yeah, and with that note, I will please thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share my experience. Thank you so much. Over to you, Chetan. Thank you.
Thanks, Puneet. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences around diagnosis and assessments, and for also highlighting some of like the important points, really, about how self-diagnosis versus a clinical diagnosis, the importance of self-diagnosis and knowing oneself, and also the nuances that happen within the clinical space, like you mentioned, the hospital, the clinic, and how the professionals sort of rely more on a medical model, and where we need to really acknowledge the social model, look at it in a more humane approach than just the patients. Right? Also, it was fascinating to see how you described self-advocacy, really, also coming out of self-care. I think we miss out on that self-care aspect, and then that's so crucial to really know that. And also talking about the various intersectional factors of religion, culture, locations, different locations, social locations. So thanks so much, Puneet, for this. And yes, we also have some questions which we can take later on. We'll now proceed to the next speaker. So, Shreya,
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
one second, I'll introduce you to the
Yeah.
audience. So, Shreya will be talking about home and family environment. Um, Shreya PT is a disability inclusion advocate and practices as an online counselor and works as a consultant at Identity Clinic. Her main aim is to help people heal and lead better lives. Thanks so much for joining, Shreya. Over to you.
First of all, I would like to thank Chetan sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be part of this wonderful workshop. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining on this Sunday evening. So first, what I would like to start off with in terms of family and home environment experiences is the first thing that comes is the acceptance of the child's situation. That is one crucial step. It's very difficult for any parent, for any parent to accept the matter of fact that the child is diagnosed with some disability. That's a very difficult part. So that is one of the major factor. For me for me, I was lucky enough because my parents were supportive. Yes, for them also, it was very difficult to accept the matter of fact that I'm a slow learner and I'll need help in special education. So that was really difficult for them. But touch wood, for me, they were extremely supportive with the fact that okay, I had to be shifted to a special school for my better education, for my better future in life. So that was one part. But the second part started when the family members were not so okay with it. Like, that was the major thing that happened, that she looks absolutely fine. Why does she need to go to a special school? Why don't you just shift the school? Why don't you just put her into some other normal school? She'll be absolutely fine. Why do you want to put her? So the notion that just because a person looks normal in a certain way, and just by looks you can't say that the person is having a problem or not. I think that is one huge drawback. And how our Indian society sees disability matters. For me, I was extremely lucky that I had supportive parents, but I have my friends, who are there till now with me, like, who come from disability background. Unfortunately, they were made to hide that, they studied in special school from their own parents. And even for me, it used to be like, uh, whenever I used to go out for a party or a function or a wedding, that would be that it would be very difficult to introduce myself as a person that I come from a special school background. I wouldn't mention that. I would just say that I studied in Brindavan Education Trust. Apart from that, it was a school who would cater to children with special needs and all that. I wouldn't mention that because there was a lot of stigma and shame that was associated to it. Like, just because you are having some disability issues means that you are treated in a very different way. I mean, that's really sad that even today, though we have progressed so much as a society, family support and family environment matters, but the problem is still they are not at all supportive. I have seen that when somebody says that the child is from a special school, there are relatives or there are other family members coming and telling the parents things like, oh, why did you put the child into a special school? What is wrong? She looks absolutely fine. I think that is something that's really sad. And what what I want to ask the parents or request the parents is that please be supportive with your children when they are diagnosed with a certain disability. I think that is very important because you can ignore other family members to a certain extent, whatever they say. But when parents themselves are not supportive, that becomes extremely difficult because I have seen and I have experienced my own very extremely close friends going through it. Like, you can't read, you can't study, why are you like this? Own parent making the child feel that they're not worth it, or they're not worth of things that a normal child is worth of. So that's extremely sad. And even the society, even the society, I think the major thing a government should do is, as Puneet sir said before, that sensitizing people regarding disability. It's absolutely fine to be disabled, or it's absolutely fine to be different from somebody. I think the kind of awareness that needs to get in is extremely important. Not in just in terms of education, or not in just in terms of workplace. It is also the home environments that should reach, because until unless a child with disability does not get this support of the family, it is really difficult for the child to come up in life. For me, I would really like to thank my parents, because today I'm a counselor. I do online counseling. I try help people to heal themselves, but the same chances are not given to the other child. There are cases where I have seen that the child has certain problem, but the family is not at all ready to accept it. They are saying that, oh, my child is absolutely fine. Why does she need any kind of help? She's just lazy, or she does not want to take interest. So these are the kind of the stigma that gets associated, and it's really sad. At home itself the child is made to feel that, oh, you're not worth it. And what happens is, when these kind of things happens, the child is led to a stage of self doubt. Initially that happened to me, like when I was diagnosed with the fact that I had learning disability and I had to be shifted to a special school. So for me, there was a lot of different things, because In a normal school, you are made to wear uniform and all that. We used to wear color dress. So initially, I was studying in a normal school and I switched to a special school. So it was very difficult for me. And then the other family members started with that. Oh, they started to taunt that what kind of a school is this, what kind of education are they giving. So it's extremely sad that I feel that parents should be more accepting and sensitive, and even the other family members, that if you don't understand what exactly the problem is, they shouldn't interfere there, or they shouldn't pass negative comments that may affect the parents. See, with children, the family as well gets affected. It is not just the child, it's the parents, it's the siblings if they have siblings. Even siblings go through a lot of things. They see that, okay, I am absolutely fine, but why is my brother or sister like this? And then when the family only says that, oh, the child is very different, the child is disabled and all that, that kind of shame towards the sibling becomes more. So I feel as a society, we should be more educated in terms of the family part, because it's really sad. It's extremely sad to see that even today, if a child is having disability, or if a child is having any other problems, learning problems, or any other difficulty, they are not given that kind of love, affection, and the opportunity that a child deserves. They are ignored, they are made to stay away. It's really sad part. In some houses, they're not brought to social events. They are made to feel like as though they are not part of the normal society. So it's really sad. Yes, to a certain extent there has been a little normalcy, but still today we see so many places that the fact that a person with disability is treated very differently. And the kind of support that is given by the society to the parents, to the family, is also not very great. I would like to talk about that as well. Nowadays both the parents go for jobs, both are working. And for a child with disability, some of the children will with disability will need full day care. And the society is not at all understanding. In fact, they are judged that, why do you run around so much, or they are not able to be more productive as they are supposed to be. So it becomes very difficult until unless the society is not aware of this thing. And if the society is still not sensitized, they should be sensitized with the fact that it's absolutely normal, for a child to have some sort of disability or some sort of a issue. Because what happens is, there is lot of pressure on the parents that your child should be perfect. That your child should be perfect, the child should score 90% and above. So there's lot of, what do you say, the pressure on the parents from the day the child is born. And it starts with basics, like, oh, your child looks dark, or your child looks fair. And as they start growing, oh, my child started to work early, didn't your child start to work early? So all these comparisons starts there. And then if the child is diagnosed with some disability or some problem, then the major problem starts. The parent feels guilty that, okay, what mistake did I do that the child is having this kind of problem? That's because the society is still not desensitized with the matter of fact that it's absolutely fine that the child is having a sort of disability. For me also, there used to be, when I say that I come from a special school background, people would say, oh, you look fine, why did you go to a special school? Or there would be comments on my appearance, because I have spina bifida. It's a physical condition, so I look a little tilted. So there used to be judgments like, okay, are you sure that you're capable? That has happened to me even in the family functions or wherever I go. So, and the way they tell it is also not in a proper way, it's like a taunt. That's because of lack of awareness, I think, lack of desensitization. and lack of acceptance of the child's condition because of the societal pressure that my child should be perfect. I think every parent through this workshop, I would like to request the parents that please let your child be the way they are. If they're a slow learner, it's fine. They'll pick up. If they're having any sort of disability, it's fine. I know as a parent, it's very difficult to accept it, but please don't compare your child with another children. It's not good at all. And trust me, if you are letting your child the way they are, that would be really helpful. And the amount of support you give matters a lot. I think I'm one of those examples when parents support you, what a child can become. So I would really urge to the parents, and I would also like the government to come up with laws, rules, and regulations that desensitizes the society with disability. And as well as I would like to urge that there should be some laws where children are looked after in a very dignified way. There should be some sort of punishments as well if the child is behaved, if the child is treated in really wrong way or in a cruel way, because this happens. If a child is having some difficulty, if it is a severe problem, the child does not understand what is happening around him or her, the child is misbehaved, they are they behave really bad with the child. It's extremely sad that we are becoming so advanced, we are growing as a society, but humanity is lagging behind somewhere between all these things. So I would really request the government, and through this workshop I would also like to tell the parents is, don't let a third person comment on your child. I think that would be something that I would like to request, because what happens is it's not the fault of the parents. Sometimes the relatives or anybody, they kind of make them feel that okay, you should do this, you should do that. Why your child is like this and all that. So under that pressure, under that stress, the parents may become very insensitive to their own children. So I feel that they should be little sensitive, and even the government should come up with laws that protect the rights of these children, who are disabled. And they should be more educated, through the I mean educated. I'm pretty sure nowadays, all of us use social media, whoever it is. We are more addicted to our phones. I really feel that if people try to create awareness about the disability and how it is so normal, I think that would be really helpful. And if a child is treated the way he or she should be treated is done, I'm pretty sure a child with disability also can do better things in life. So I would like to end, and thank you so much, Chetan sir, for giving me this opportunity. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Shreya, for bringing out so many important things, for sharing so many of your experiences. It was quite interesting that you shared how concept of acceptance starts from self, and
Yeah,
how that's a process. That's something that suddenly is not
yeah,
achieved. It also brought about the invisibility component of
correct.
dyslexia, learning disability, and how that also creates ableism, and importantly about how hiding that can cause more stigma and more
Yeah,
discrimination in the society, and how talking about it actually sort of destigmatizes it. And also for bringing about talking about the point of working parents, siblings,
yeah,
you know and about the perfection that a lot of parents look for in their children. So about highlighting the government's role, in really having certain policies in place. Thanks so much for this, Shreya. It was
thank
wonderful listening to you. Right. So we've had three speakers talking about different contexts. We will now take a break, a short break for about 5 to 10 minutes. It's 5:58. Maybe we can be back by 6:05, just to cool off. It's evening. If this were a face-to-face conference, we could have all had some tea or coffee and some snacks. But I hope you do have that at the comfort of your place. And just cool off, and then we will be back in another 5 minutes. So by 6:05, we should be able to resume the next panel. Um, I will also paste the feedback form. We have a feedback form. So as and when possible, please do take some time and fill that. It will be very useful to hear your thoughts and suggestions so that we can improve as well. So let's take a short break and then we'll be back at 6:05 and have the next line of speakers. Thanks. Um, Hi everyone, welcome back. Um, we'll now resume with the second panel. Pratik, I hope you're here. I
Hi, I'm here. Hi.
All right, good. You can turn on your video if you want.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I would like to share a keynote, if that's fine.
Yeah. Can I introduce you and the topic that you're talking, and then maybe?
Please
Oh,
go ahead.
thanks,
Please.
thanks, Pratik. All right. Um, I hope you all had a break and just moved a little bit and had something to eat or drink. Um, So the next speaker is Pratik NT, who will be talking about school and college experiences. Pratik is an aeronautical engineer with a unique journey dealing with ADHD and dyslexia challenges. At 18, he designed a telescope dome at the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. As the youngest hall manager of Aero India 2019, Pratik engaged with high profile figures, including Nirmala Sitharaman. With a background in aviation management, he contributed to Bangalore Airport as a relationships manager and roles that incline towards airport security. Pratik's diverse experiences, including working with an Indian author, contributing to the National Skill Technology Institute during the pandemic, and training students in Mastercam, a CNC designing software. Currently studying product design at RV University, Pratik is here to talk about his life's endeavor. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk, Pratik.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thank you, Chetan. Thank you, everyone, for giving me your time, your valuable time. So I would like to share a little small PPT that I made, if it's okay with you guys. So 1 minute. Is my PPT visible?
Not yet.
Not yet. Just a minute. I'll rejoin the meet. Just a minute.
Pratik will just rejoin because there's some technical glitch in sharing his screen. Yeah. Hi, Pratik. You're back. I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry for the inconvenience. There's little issue, I guess. Share. Okay, for some reason I'm not able to present it. I'm sorry, but I'll speak.
You can send it to my email and I can share it. That's okay.
Yeah, I can send it to your email. But can we proceed with the next person so that it doesn't clog up? If it's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I think it should be okay. Priyank, would it be okay for you to talk? Um, um,
Hi, just give me 2 minutes.
yes, yes, sure, sure, please. That's okay.
Chetan, in meanwhile, you can introduce Pratik. Sorry, Priyank.
Yes. All right. So Pratik will speak after Priyank because there's a technical glitch. We'll sort that out. Let me introduce Priyank. Priyank will be talking about understanding strengths and fostering them. Priyank Sukanand is neurodivergent and an LGBTQ plus rights activist and the co-founder of Queer Collective India. Queer Collective India has been working on building a safe network of shelter spaces for victims of domestic violence, abuse, and discrimination within the LGBTQ community. Priyank has also been active in dealing with crisis and intervention cases in Bangalore and Hyderabad. As an entrepreneur, he revived his great great grandfather's bakery from 1888 and rebranded it as Bangalore Connection 1888 in 2018. He is currently the head of the Department of Food Sciences at Lingua Skills Hub, a learning center for kids with special education needs like autism and dyslexia, or any child who prefers to learn differently. He's working on using his skill sets as a tool to empower all kinds of children who wish to look at food as a passion and profession. Thank you so much, Priyank, for joining in. Uh, we'd like to hear more from you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chetan, and thank you everyone for showing up on a Sunday evening. I know it must be pretty exhausting, but yes, to sort of give you a little bit, and thanks for that introduction as well. Um, Yes, I'm neurodivergent. I prefer using the word neurodivergent for multiple reasons. Particularly, I don't like the prefix that words get with dyslexia, for example, or disability, because I don't think it's about the lack of an ability. It's just that I work differently or I'm wired differently. And that doesn't mean just because of the neurotypical world, which again, neurotypical of what's typical and being compared with other typical people and saying that I'm lesser than what they are. Um, I believe that my journey as a neurodivergent person has sort of aided the success or has made me become a lot more happier and made me feel a lot more content with life. And of course, that journey wouldn't have started without any struggles or challenges. And I think there were a fair share of struggles and challenges, which I don't think I really faced more than what my parents did. So I did resonate a lot with what Shreya had to say in so many ways. That yes, my parents had to face a lot more criticism from the society than really that I had to face them. But also, I probably did, and I was just too young to recognize or realize what was really going on. So to just dive into a little bit of the history of my journey is I shifted 8 schools. When I look back, I don't have school friends because every time I actually made a friend, it was really time to say goodbye and leave. Apart from, of course, now with the internet and with like social media, that there is some form of reconnection, but it's not really the same kind that I would have had if I'd stayed in one school. I was at Bishop Cotton Boys School, and I think that was the longest stint that I was at. And I think it was 4th grade when they realized that, there was something really, really different, or in some ways at those days wrong. So my parents at that time assumed maybe it's the ICSE syllabus and said, okay, maybe we're going to switch him to CBSE. And so I moved to what was then those days called international schools. I don't recognize how international they really were, but apart from the fact that they just had a different method of teaching, I guess, or just the fact that it was no more 60 students in a class, it was just 45. So there was Probably that was the biggest reason. And I think the CBSE school also didn't really work for me. I remember every time it was science class and I hadn't had, if I didn't finish my homework, I would actually, walk up to my class teachers and say I'm feeling sick and go sleep in the infirmary. So, so I think she practically caught on, because for one whole quarter, I think I spent more time in the infirmary learning things with the nurse than I really did in the science class. Um, and so yes, so I was diagnosed at that school, which is the final school, the eighth school, where the principal said maybe your son actually has a learning disability, and you should probably get them assessed. Um, an assessment that lasted over, I think, 3 months, where I just, when I think Pratik mentioned about the assessments, those were really stressful things. I remember, because they were just long questionnaires and lot of mathematics and a lot of things. And also at the time when all of this was going on, I don't think there was enough research around learning disabilities or what they entailed and how we learned differently and so on. And I joined Brindavan Education Trust. And I think that really took a huge turn for my life, huge change, because I felt I was a lot more valued and a lot more recognized and a lot more encouraged at Brindavan. And don't worry, this is not a promotional material for Brindavan, but I Brindavan really did change my life for the better. And it sort of brings me here to speak about how Vrindavan recognized my strengths, also allowed me to look within and find out what my real strengths were, and then foster them for the future and foster them to become, become make a career out of it in some ways, I guess. So yes, I had dysgraphia, I had dyslexia, dyscalculia. Um, it was very difficult because I still struggle with dysgraphia actually. If as a teacher, especially, I'm expected to be have like beautiful handwriting and be able to write diaries and things like that. And every time I think I write a comment in a diary, the first thing I feel is embarrassed. And even now, and then recognize that wait, there are different ways to sort of do this, right? I could have just used that. Um, but one of the things that I actually forgot to mention at Bishop Cotton's is why I left. What triggered it was my Hindi teacher took my book, and I think she wanted to show my parents, and so she was really forceful about it, and the book fell off her hand and on my parents, and so it sort of was misstrued as as something that was aggressive on her end, and I think that was the last straw in the stack for my parents. Um, and so I think in some ways I'm very grateful for Cottons or Bishop Cottons, is because they really built my early age intervention on with my language skills. I really am grateful because I can speak well, and that's something that I look at as one of my biggest strengths. I may not be able to write really well. I may not be able to do essays and things like that, but or poetry or or Shakespeare or any of that, but I can communicate, and I think in today's world that's all you practically need to really be able to do. We're not really going to take those poems and use it anywhere in our lives in the future, apart from rewriting our own stories in our own ways. um, at Vrindavan, I think the chance that I really got to do is to recognize the fact that okay, you know what, mathematics is a problem, but why what am I going to do by learning big sums and algebra, or even percentage, for an example, right? But instead we looked at learning functional math. And so now, even till date, even though I have a calculator on my phone, I will try and do that whatever calculation I need to do in my head, but through functional methods. And so sort of that really works in some ways for me. I had a big struggle, and I think in sometimes I still have a struggle, is figuring out direction or left and right. And so there are ways that I sort of recognize and say, okay, you know what, let's do the march past in your head, left, right, left. And then I'm just like, I'm reoriented towards which which side I really need to go. And so yes, there are those things. My biggest weaknesses, at least, or rather things that I wasn't able to really keep up with, of course, was language. Um, I don't know how things really changed, but for someone who struggled with one language like Hindi, today I can speak six. So verbally, I'm able to speak them. But if you ask me to write any of them, I wouldn't know because I really didn't need to learn. So when we say disability, are we really just recognizing the fact that there is a lack of ability, or is it the fact that we're ignoring the fact that maybe there's a lot more, and maybe we're wired differently to learn differently to be able to survive, I guess, differently. Um, so soon after I graduated from Brindavan, actually, I decided I wanted to join the mainstream school. So I joined Christ University, which probably was the most strictest of them all. And I sort of enjoyed it because like I was telling another person who interviewed me a week ago or two, I said I think there was in Christ University, people expect you to, especially if you're doing an arts course, the examiner on the other hand has a weighing scale next to them, right? It's based on the number of pages that you write more than the content that you're writing. There were many times that in most of my papers, I just realized that I had to fill up content because I didn't know the answer. Then I had to realize, okay, you know what? Let's just rewrite the entire answer all over again. Uh, my logic was that maybe the examiner is just going to get so fed up of the kind of language or the kind of content that I've written that eventually would just feel pity and give me marks to scrape through. Um, all through my especially the mainstream education that I had, the idea or the kind of goals or the aims that I set for myself was never to excel or never to to really show up and get a big grade and come back home and say, hey, I got 90% or I got 80% or so on. It was for me was to be able to not just scrape through, but to be able to have a realistic goal to achieve. And so I think those are goals that I really am grateful that I was able to pull through and be able to survive that. Um, Kinds of policies, of course, yes, there were some provisions that neurodivergent children or other kids with disabilities that were given in Karnataka when I was studying, at least. And so, of course, I had a language exemption. But the amount of corruption in the system is what I still regret, the amount of struggles that my parents went through to get me one of those exemptions. The system is really flawed. Sorry. 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 So yeah, so I mean, like it's the system is so flawed that having one of those moments. So yeah, so the system's really flawed, and it's I really wish things had changed now. I'm not aware of how things are now, but there is, of course, a lesser stress on the idea of putting our kids and our children to mainstream education like CBSE boards and ICC boards, which we already know are difficult for neurotypical people to get through when there are a lot more options out there today. So when I got out of Christ and when I passed out of arts, I did subjects like history, economics, sociology, and political science, and English. I did not do a language, and I fared well. I mean, I don't remember what I did, but I remember I was pretty happy with it. I think more than being happy, I think I was great to get out of there. And I did apply to. I realized I wanted to focus on being a chef, and I applied to my culinary arts school in Hyderabad. And I did 3 years of culinary arts. And I think that's when I realized that a lot of the theories that I'd learned didn't really matter because I was owning a skill that I was really passionate about. And then when I went to do my masters in the UK, is when I realized the kind of provisions kids or students with learning disabilities and are given in a country like the UK, that I felt really bad. The fact that we wouldn't be able to access any of those kinds of provisions for ourselves in India. I remember the my master's course asking me if I was dyslexic or if I had dysgraphia or dyscalculia, any of it. But in the form, I just checked them all down to say no, and I said I wanted to challenge myself to do this as what a neurotypical would do, because I sort of want to be able to say to myself that, hey, yes, these are things that you were diagnosed with. Yes, you learned differently, but I think you should also be able to learn differently for yourself. So, which meant the neurotypical way. I graduated with honors from my masters, and I'm very grateful for to be able to use that skill to do something that I really love. I revived my great grandfather's bakery in Bangalore in 2018. We sort of survived for 5 years until the second wave of the pandemic, and so that's sort of one of the biggest accomplishments that I sort of feel I really did. Is one of the, as I said, one of the biggest strengths that I think I really have um, is my flair for communication, which I'm also very proud of. And I think I know some of my teachers are here, so I'm very grateful for them too, for really helping me, sort of excel in that skill. And that sort of really helped me sell my product really well, and it still does help me sell my product really well, or my skills really well, in any profession that I am in. Currently, I'm so inspired by, I'm so inspired by the fact that I'm one of the few neurodivergent teachers teaching neurodivergent children, because I think it's so much more different when you sort of are on the inside, understanding someone who is within, the spectrum as well, because I think we're able to recognize the kinds of struggles and disparities we sort of have from within, than to be able to recognize it as a neurotypical person. No offense to some of the neurotypical teachers, I think y'all do a fantastic job, but there are certain things in lived experiences are so much more different than experience, or recognizing experiences from other children and so on, or from the work that y'all do. But I think the biggest challenge that I probably have as being a special educator is the patience. So, and in the last 2 years, I think I'm a lot more patient. I communicate even to my dog as though I'm talking to a special child. It sort of really has helped me grow into a better human being, to also understand my own neurodivergence than others. And so I really thank Chetan for giving me this opportunity to really share my story. And I really would like to inspire a lot more neurodivergent children. So if anyone would like to want me to speak to their children, please do reach out. I would be happy to sort of discuss careers and things like that. So that's sort of the kind of advocacy that I want to really step into now. Thank you so much, Chetan, and everyone for listening. Thank you.
Thanks, Priyank. Thank you so much for focusing on a couple of issues, important aspects. Especially started off with language around disability and how the shift to neurodivergence, and understanding your own strengths in terms of communication and baking and culinary arts as a skill. Now, that sort of really disrupts our traditional notions of just focusing on academics, right? That there are so many host of other things that one can do, not just the academics, but also communication as a skill, as a life skill, rather than academic reading or writing. And one of the things about setting realistic goals was something that's something that we'll have to all think about. So, and also for bringing out the
I just
system.
want to add one particular thing that I sort of missed out, is the fact that the stress on learning languages and how important they seem to be for in a world that we're in today. As someone who can't read any of those 5 languages except for English, that I can't read or write or any of that, I live in a world today where I have a lens on my phone that I just have to scan any content and I'm able to translate it. We live in a world today where tech is so important and it's so vital to just making our lives a lot more easier to live. And I think instead of us trying to force the child to learn something that they're struggling with, we should just teach them how to use it better, use these technologies better. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Thanks for bringing that point. Right. Thanks so much for taking your time off, Priyank, and sharing your experiences. So we'll have the next speaker. We'll also have a Q&A at the end. So please have your questions either in the chat box or you can unmute yourselves later on. We'll now come back to Pratik. Initially, Pratik had some difficulty in sharing the screen. I'll
Yeah,
try, sharing my screen for him. Just let me know if my screen is available. It's
yeah.
you're able to see. Is my screen visible now for you?
No, actually.
Okay. Okay, just let me give it another try.
Yeah.
What about now?
Not. Yeah, 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 yeah. We can. Yeah, it's visible now. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chetan, for like introducing me again, and yeah, thank you everyone for listening to me and the precious time that you all given me on a Sunday. And yeah, so I'd like to get started on about my topic about school and college experiences. So before I dive into the topic, I want to talk a little about myself. So I'm a twin. Like I have a twin sister, and like when we were born, like we were like she's elder to me by a minute, and like we were always like these two gems from my parents, and always they cherished us and like brought us up in a very good way, and like there's no such complaints as such. The only like disregard would be like we didn't get so much time with my parents actually, because they both are very hardworking and they don't live in Bangalore as such. So that's why. So like after I was born, like we went Gujarat and then we came back to Bangalore, and in Bangalore, the schools and all, like we joined the school here, and my sister performing very well in the school, and she was doing like extremely well. She was scoring all 80, 90s and stuff, and I was there in my like I was in my 30s and 40s, and I used to feel very conscious ki, like why is this happening to me and stuff. And during the whole time, my mom and dad were very supportive of me. They never compared us, but they always tried to push me and like tell me ki, like you should do this better, you should do this better, you can do this more, like something like that. And my mom used to always sit by my side during my exams, and she used to help me out and stuff. And then later when the movie Tare Zameen Par was released, that's when my parents realized ki, like there is something called dyslexia and maybe our kid has that. And I was in my third grade back then, and then my mom took me to Manipal Hospital in Bangalore, and they got me diagnosed. And I didn't really know that I was going to a doctor. So like Chetan, can you please go to the next slide? Like I have like yeah, thank you. Yeah, so like I didn't really know I was going to doctor actually. And then she took me there, and then I spoke to the doctor, and he did a little tests. It was a 2-day test and all. The tests were very hectic. It was very confusing for me, for like a person three. Like I was just in a third standard, so I didn't really know what was happening and such. And then later we come back home, and then my mom was being more cooperative with me, and like she helped me with my exams, she helped me with my assignments, she made my sister and me sit together and do the assignment. She made my sister understand like this is how it is for him, so please be like understanding of him, and they accommodated me very well. And after that, like I was in my ninth grade when my dad came back from Gujarat, because he can't really take so many leaves. So he came back from Gujarat, and then he realized that I was doing like I was not really doing so well in academics. So he changed my school, and then later like he put me to a different school. It was no special school as such, but it was a very like it was a very normal school. It was Diksha High, and there the principal and my faculty and all were very accommodative of me, and they helped me out through everything. And one of the problems which I faced in my like school was like understanding when the teacher tells something, or writing cursive, like because cursive, even to this day I don't understand cursive handwriting, because I feel like they're all connected, and I'm like, how do I separate them, and how do I read them? and stuff. And then later, like in school, I still remember because I had a very good thick accent, and I used to be very vocal about my opinions and stuff. So they made me join the choir group, and then I was in the choir group, and like we used to sing and stuff. And then later, it helped me like gain my confidence back. And then later, my dad, like, since to keep my morale up, he had promised me, if I cleared out my 10th exam without any bad scores, he'll get me a car. And then, like, he got me a car which I loved a lot, and even I have it to this day. And like, he got me a car, and he's like, yeah, here you go, and I'll support you, just make sure that you don't give up so easily. And my parents never treated me as a let's say neurodivergent or something, but they were always accommodative, understanding of me. They were always like, sometimes get like too much worried about me and stuff. But then later, like, it was always like, it's okay, he will learn. They were patient with me. And then later, I cleared out my 10th, and then I went to my aeronautical engineering. And there, it was very difficult for me. I had a year back, and during that year back, I had a very difficult time. During that time, my dad taught me to drive a car, and he was supportive of me, and he told me, like, you can do this, you can do that. He took me out on solo trips with him. And then that's when I got my first opportunity to work with the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. I went there, and I stayed there for a week, and then I helped them design a telescope dome for them. And to this day, like, when you go there, you can see, like, it's all my records are not there and stuff. So after that, I came back to Bangalore, and then again I was back to my education and stuff. I was doing, like, it was a little difficult for me. My college was not really understanding like he's dyslexic or something like that. And then later, my parents thought, okay, like, okay, like, he's finding mathematics is very difficult, because like I'm going back a little again, because in my school days, when they introduced algebra to me, like, it was like a two different concepts. Like, alphabets were different and numbers were different. And like, now, like, alphabets and numbers, they both got jumbled, and I'm like, why are they jumbled? They should not be jumbled, because why does numbers have to be with X or Y or any alphabet in that manner? Because they're all very different in my head. I can't perceive the way that others could do. So my mom, who's a teacher actually, she was a training officer. She sat down with me, and she used to help me through my exams, like, a lot. Every day she used to sit with me till 3 a.m. during my exams, and she used to make me study. And in my engineering, what happened was, I started failing my mathematics, engineering mathematics too. So what happened was, I failed that subject about 11 times till now. And about a year ago, I cleared it, and it was all because my parents were, like, completely supportive of me. And like, my university didn't really understand as such. Then they were it's quite like, the system is quite corrupt in that way. It's not about understanding, it's about the system. It's like, you have to go do this, do that, and then, like, you come back to stage zero. And then at one point, I realized, like, the system is not really going to do anything much for me, so I might as well buck up and do it by myself. So I took help from my mom and dad. My dad used to, like, sit with me, and he taught me math again, like, all over from the beginning. And then I finally, like, hook and crook, I just finished it with, like, with good numbers. And to this day, I'm very proud of that, of my parents and, like, my sister. They've been very supportive of me. And during my, like, Chetan, can you please go to my next slide? Yeah. So, like, here, like I've written it down, like, like I still remember, like, because I was not really so good at, like, let's say, like, reading out in the class openly or something like that. People used to bully me and stuff. They used to be like, you can't do this such simple tasks, and they used to yell at me and stuff. And, like, what I used to do was, I used to, like, not go to colleges sometime. I used to be like, no, I'm feeling sick, I don't want to go anywhere today, and I used to just stay back. And during those days, my parents were very supportive of me, and they were like, it's okay, go, and we'll come to your college. Even now, I'm pursuing my product design engineering right now, BDES, that is, in RV University. And even now, I had some problems with the like authorities, and they're not giving me time and stuff. So that's when my parents showed up at the college, and they told them like, this is not right and stuff. And my parents have come to the college, and they've stood up for me, and they've told, okay, this is how it is meant to be and stuff. And then finally I did get some extra time to finish my assignments and stuff, because it is getting very hectic for me. And then my friends who are in my college are very supportive of me. Like just recently, I was not able to understand few topics in my class, and a friend of mine was so kind to me that like they sat with me and they told me this is how the assignment is to be done, even though the submission date was past it, but I still did it. And yeah, that's like it. And then during all these times, I got my diagnosis when after I finished my aeronautical. And like at that point I was like, what does it matter? Like, you have finished it, and you don't really want this diagnosis letter anywhere. But I'm like, it's okay, it is okay, let me have it, because it'll give me a special ability. It's not a disability, it's a special ability, more of special ability. So then later, we got that certificate. During that certificate, my mom and dad both had come with me. They were with me the whole time, and they told me it's okay, you do what you feel is right for you. And they were always my strengths, and they still are my strength. And then later, I started during all these times, it was never like I stopped like at any point because I was depressed or something. Chetan, can you go to my seventh slide if you don't mind? Yeah. So like here you can see I was the youngest hall manager for Aero India 2019, which is conducted in Bangalore. And I got to meet Nirmala Sitharaman, and I got to meet with a lot of I got to work with a lot of French delegates, and Dassault Rafale, that's a aviation company from France. And I worked with them for 2 months, and it was a very good experience. It is one of the best, actually, I can tell. And then I worked with the author in India. His name is Joji. And it helped me realize that how good I am at so many things. And like the whole time, like I was like, don't see a disability like a disability, it's more than that. So it's like that. And then I did my aviation course of 2 years. And then later, after that, I started working at the Bangalore airport for as a relationship manager, and for the security team and stuff. And then later, during COVID, I didn't want to be at home. I wanted to be as productive as possible. So I worked with National Skill Training Institute by conducting their meetings, and I was being there. I was there, this person who had to do anything with tech, anything with data, anything like that. And during that time, like during the second wave, I wanted to start a EV station, actually. So because EVs were right trending at that moment. So I took up course, and I finished that. And then like later, I went and I worked, because I wanted to get into the design field a little more. So then I went and worked with a aerospace and defense company in Bangalore. And that got me a lot of contacts, and that's when I realized how good I am at how good I'm at like 3D visualization and 3D softwares and stuff. And that's when I learned a software called Mastercam in like 3 months. And I taught like 20 plus students, and the software. And to this day, they come back to me, and they tell like this was the fastest that they've learned the software with, like regarding any of that software in that matter. And then later, this what kept me going was my parents. Like they were like, don't sit at home, just go out there and do. It's not like you have something wrong with you. And always like getting me like gadgets which I like noise cancelling headphones, it could be, which can help me a lot to focus and stuff. Like one of my ways of coping was, Chetan, can you please go to slide number 5? Yeah, one of my ways of coping was, let's say, I can't really like concentrate at times. Like I get distracted too easily. So I put on music, and I put on noise cancelling headphones, and it helps me block out so much noise that it helps me concentrate and live in the present. And it makes me sane to like do this. And then I always have this rule, not having any apps on my phone other than just phone and WhatsApp and like messaging, because those are the only things that I want my phone for. If I have any other things, then it is difficult for me to not open those apps and like, like get diverted. My attention, I have like, this is how I see life. Like I see it like I have a very short amount of time here and I want to be the most productive possible in spite of having my disabilities and stuff. I want to give out my best and help out people like me who have these problems and make it heard and make everyone realize that it's not a disability, it's a special ability which makes you much more than what you are. Because in my college I see so many people with who are similar to me, and they are so much better than the people who are not neurodivergent. And it feels like the people who are neurodivergent are more understanding and more helpful than other people. We don't Neurodivergent people, because they've been through pain and stuff in their lives, they don't really put down anyone, or they don't really like they don't really it's not like they're not there for anyone to help out. Even though like they have so much going on in their lives, they help out other people as well. They're very accommodating and stuff. And like this, like it's all about like being there for others. And like if we're not there for our own mankind or humankind, then nobody else will be. So yeah, that's about it. Maybe I didn't go a little off topic though, sorry. Chetan, like if it's okay. Yeah, I think I'm done. Yeah.
Thanks, Pratik. Thanks for sharing that, your experiences and your journey,
Yeah.
and for also highlighting about so many aspects of your own life journey,
Yeah.
and the importance of peer support, and the importance of having different possibilities, uh, you know, um, and also different coping ways.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing your
I would
experience.
just like to add on one thing, like if it's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Like there is this thing, discovering yourself and understanding yourself and loving yourself comes a long way. The more you go away from yourself, the more you get back to dark places that you don't want to. So like I want parents to be more understanding of their kids and be like, give them some more time. If somebody wants more time, give them more time. It's okay, they'll come back. But don't be impulsive with them just because they're not performing as well as others are. And in this whole world of comparison, it's not about who's better than who. It's about, is he doing better for himself. That is all about it. So yeah, I would like to end my note on that. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we also have a comment from Rajini ma'am. She says, I think you found help because you sought help and your family has been advocating, which eased you into the advocating for yourself. I think that's really an important point. Thanks so much for sharing that,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yeah. We will now move on to the next speaker. Parikshith, are you here? I hope you can share your screen. Just check if you can share your screen.
Yep,
You should
I will check.
my-
Give me a second. Is it visible?
Yes, yes, it's coming up.
Wonderful.
All right, let me
Wonderful.
introduce you first.
Yep.
So Parikshit is going to be talking about technology tools and environmental support. Parikshit Shashikumar is a PhD scholar of science and technology studies at IIT Hyderabad, diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, an enthusiast of alternative teaching solutions and learning lesson plans, which are applicable within the mainstream classrooms. Thank you so much for joining us, Pratik. We are happy to have you, Parikshit. So over to you, Parikshit.
Hello there. Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to quickly just thank everyone who came before me, everyone, all of the speakers. All of them very much did highlight different aspects of being neurodivergent and carrying very strong concerns. And one of the things that is often denied to us is this very basic space of complaining. And I think that's, I mean, we use heavy words like advocacy, and that's definitely there, but that's for the outside. One of the most basic things that we're denied is the capacity to just be frustrated, to admit that it is hard and then move forward. Because when we don't have the capacity to do that, it becomes invisible and it becomes far more destructive. So, in that vein, my topic, I hope to talk to, I hope to talk about technology less as a recommendation of tools. I'm hoping a lot of people are not hoping for that, but I have a list. Perhaps in the question answer session, I can give what is required. More in my topic rather is, I want to talk about how to think about seeking, using, and wanting technology, because we deserve it, and we live in a golden age wherein at least cheap solutions are available for different problems. Anyway, let me move on. Yeah, first of all, who am I? I'm Parikshith Shashikumar. At least for this particular occasion, what's very important to admit to is I have, in the last minute, I was discovered to have dyslexia and dyscalculia. Actually, I'm glad that the speaker before me mentioned Tare Zameen, but it came out when I was about to write the 10th exam. So I did my entire schooling without knowing that there was fundamentally something wrong with me, not in the behavioral way, but as in the wiring. And I wish people knew that. I was found to have dyslexia in the very last minute, and the only compensation that I was given was half an hour extra. Luckily, as I moved forward, in Christ University, I managed to advocate for a scribe because of as mentioned before, one of the speakers, the amount that you have to write. I managed to get that there in Christ University. And here, only a year ago, I discovered during the hellish period that was the pandemic that I had ADHD, which explained a lot more of my emotional and dispositional difficulties that I've had with education and all that stuff. All of this in the very last minute. So what I'm also trying to admit to here is I've actually had the misfortune of competing with neurotypical standards, neurotypical ways of looking at the world, and neurotypical ways of understanding things. So, given my experience, technology was my one respite. Technology was my only means of more than just leveling the playing field. It was a means of practicing self-attention. And what do I mean by that is it is an act of attending to. It's attending to my needs. It's attending to my comforts. It's an attending to my standards of improvement. And that is really what I hope everybody who has access to something as basic as Google, something as basic as, a phone, a computer, or whatever thing. Every time you pick up a device that all our neurotypical, brethren have, then they might use for, very basic use. For us, it might just be a means of understanding, finding out, and gaining a little more ground, not for external standards of improving, getting better grades and whatnot, but to attending to yourself. Why? Because fundamentally speaking, we are all bound by external circumstances. I mean, I would like a world where our government was a lot more kinder, a lot more attentive, a lot more, atypical, so to speak. But how far can that really go? Because like it or not, at an everyday, every minute level, we are always bound by some physical, interactive, or some normative understandings of capacities. When I talk about physical, I'm literally talking about, input and output. Can I read this? Can I write that? Can I say these particular words correctly? Interactive is our language capacities, our, am I presenting myself in the correct social cultural strata? Normative capacities, here we're talking about things in a little bit of a neurotypical existence and divergent existence as a catch-all category, but the minute you add on any type of socio-technical differences, if I'm born a girl, if I'm born in any other, if I'm born without access to any other amount of social capital, immediately everything else, all the rules change for me. So we are always bound by these capacities. So this, it's important to first admit that, it is difficult for all of us, but it's always difficult in different ways. And there's no escaping from these, defining capacities. But with technology, it allows us to effect and negotiate change in whatever ways we can fit. I mean, in whatever ways we deserve to negotiate with it. That might mean gaining things like knowledge. The minute, you talk about feminism to, a young girl who's always incorporated a very problematic understanding of her body, desire, and thing. It's mind-blowing to that person. Same way when I finally watched Dar is Zameen Par and I finally looked back on all of my, bad spellings and realizing, holy shit, okay, I may not be able to paint, but definitely I do the same type of mistakes and I feel seen, I feel happy. So even gaining knowledge is the first step of negotiating with these capacities. And from gaining knowledge, we can start gaining methods. Okay, fine. I admit that I have really, really, really abysmal spelling. But is there a different method of writing then? Something that allows me to change the way I go about that? Is there a different method of speaking, changing? One of the speakers before us talked about how they can now speak 6 languages, and it's because they have learned how to use technology in a way that gives them access to doing that. That's an extraordinary gift that, again, it wasn't immediate. It took time. From knowledge, you got a method, and then you spend time on that method. You learn to give yourself that time when practicing this technology. Now, how do we do this? First and foremost, the first thing that I think all of us need to admit to here is we have the right, more than just the right, the need, the capacity to, the luxury to examine issues that bother us and examine our hopes, our wishes. There were so many times that I wished, I would sit back and think, it's so hard to keep ideas in my head. I know I have the capacity to understand things, but it's very, very hard to hold ideas in my head. I wish that there was a different way of putting down those ideas in an easy way that wasn't just a blank page that was very vertical and thing. And it was through examining these questions of how that I found out things like, mind maps. I realized I'm very good at talking. So I realized that my friend on the other hand, while I'm great at understanding things, I can't read, whereas it's the opposite for them. They could read, but they couldn't understand a word of, say, economics. So what I did was I asked them, hey, how about you read out to me? I can listen and I can explain things to you. So what we did there was we examined an issue and we examined a hope, an issue that he had and a hope that I had. And through that, we found a particular solution. And most of the world will ask you, just do your sums, just do your homework, just do what is due. And you're constantly folding, bending to very, very uncomfortable standards and uncomfortable methods of, assumed methods. And unless you get the support of other people, you will think, yes, this is the only way to go about things. But the first luxury you can give yourself is admit to saying, every time I do this task, this bothers me. Why? Is there a better way to going about it? Is there a better way that I can even think about it? What would I like? What would I like to happen here? So from that first question of examining, the second thing that we ought to do is encourage. We should encourage discovery. We should encourage growth. We should encourage experimentation. And this includes, when I say the word encourage, I mean it on a personal level and on an interpersonal level. Sometimes parents find it hard to ask, when you're experimenting with a new technology or, a new solution, say, I find a audio reader online free. There are no standards to understand, am I doing it right? you know. Whereas there are so many ways of grading whether a child finished a particular text, because you have to answer those questions in a particular way. There's so many ways of testing and knowing whether you did the neurotypical way of learning properly. There are no standards of, at least commonly speaking, of knowing if we're doing it right. So the first and foremost is, it's okay. Encourage yourself to play around with it, to grow, to discover, to experiment, to see if you are comfortable or not. That's the first step that, say, parents can definitely step in there. And if not parents, friends, if not friends, acquaintances. The point is, you very much do want to adapt. You do want to look at your peers and say, hey, I would like to do that too, but I think I want to do it in a different way. And the minute someone doesn't encourage you, no, you're supposed to have to read it in this particular way, know that that person is saying something very stupid, because you have just admitted that you do want to do the task, you do want to do the reading, you do want to get good grades. But just because that person said you are not doing it properly is they're denying you that ability of really fulfilling your capacities. So from encouragement, we can move to exploration. You can explore tools, you can explore skills, you can explore routines and iteration. What do I mean by exploration here? I mean literally go nuts. The minute you find, say, a reading solution that is better than picking up a book, don't immediately pick it up to read your lessons. When I got my first laptop when I went to Christ University. That was my first device that was capable of downloading my first text to speech software. It was horrible back the time, it was terrible. Now there's so much easier solutions. But when I first heard, the capacity to copy and paste the text and it being read out to me in a very clinky, very mechanical voice, I wept tears. But immediately I understood, okay, this is not a great solution if I'm going to suddenly read, Foucaultian theory. Screw that. Let me read Percy Jackson first. Let me learn to read like any other child would read a book. Let me learn to use this tool and explore. Let me see if I can better it. Let me see if I can play with speeds. Let me make this my own thing. So the beauty of exploration is you literally just gain experience. That's all you first need. And then again, these are things that are not owed to us. You can see how many times kids, there's such a thing like, booktube and book talk exists nowadays, where a bunch of people sit and read so many books and different genres and whatnot. Imagine a dyslexic who didn't experiment this way. Look at them and say, I would have loved to read a book. And unfortunately, I can't. I have to stick to mainstream media, mainstream movies, because that's the only medium I can understand. Well, you don't have to do that way. You can explore, you can gain that experience, and moving from that experience that you learn from something that's comfortable, easy, purely just experiential, you can adapt that to things that are useful, so to speak. I read so many storybooks so that the act of reading is so easy for me that when I suddenly have to shift over to something like, say, argumentative theory, it is the only thing I'm paying attention to is the content, not the method, not the intent, not anything else. And again, this is how you encourage people to do things like this. And it's okay. And this is perhaps the most, if I could add, if there's one thing that I would want all of you to genuinely take from this, is these actions, ultimately, they prove that you are entitled to frivolity. Frivolity meaning frivolous actions. You're entitled to enjoy what other people take for granted. When other people say, oh my God, I hate this homework and thing, they're talking from a place of boredom. They're talking from a place of boredom. Imagine the luxury of getting boredom. For us, I remember every time any kind of math homework was given to me, I wish I was bored from it. But no, I was panicked. I was baffled. I was extremely stressed. Imagine having the ability to complain about something like, oh, I now have the tools, I now have the technology to make sense of things, and now I am merely just bored by this problem. Because that's what you deserve. That's what all the other kids have. So you are entitled to that frivolity. Secondly, you are entitled to mistakes. And by mistakes, I don't mean the mistakes that we make, that our teachers, our professors, our bosses will point out to us. No, 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 no. I mean mistakes that frustrate you. Mistakes like, I wish this app read faster because I'm so bored and I lost my train of thought. I should do it in this particular way. Oh, this mind map is not that comfortable for me and I wasn't able to save the file in this particular way. Let me save it in this way. These are personal mistakes that, move us from one iteration of solution to another that makes us more comfortable. And again, other people make mistakes and they learn from it. When we make mistakes, we suffer from it. But you are entitled to your own mistakes, to your own acts of frustration. Imagine the luxury of being frustrated by a medium that you could access, but because you're not just getting. Imagine if the problem of a book wasn't the medium, the words, the jumbling words, the thing, but actually, hey, I don't understand what this author is saying. Can you okay, let me just Google this and figure out what he's saying. You are entitled to your own acts of frustration. And what I ultimately mean here is, people might say, don't complain. Why are you complaining? Why are you, isn't it hard for you? Why then give up if it's so hard to read. I'm doing my PhD in IIT here, and it's every time I go home and I like to complain, the first thing that my parents is, why don't you give up then? And I'm like, no, dad, mom, it's not that. Just let me, like everyone else has a bad day and they just get a little frustrated and they can talk to their friends and say, it's so hard. But that doesn't mean that I won't immediately give up. So you're entitled to that everyday acts of frustration. And just like that, you're entitled to those everyday acts of celebration. The minute you finish an assignment using a method that was finally comfortable to you, other people might say things like, one of the things that I get very, very upset about is I now read a lot of books using, audio reading methods. And one of my very close friends say, oh, Parikshith, you don't read, you listen, don't you? And that subtle act of correction that, he thought was important to point out to me. But I was like, no, I feel like I read it because I'm taking notes as well. I'm doing a bunch of other things. The way it gets into my brain is a different format. I listen to music, but I still feel like I read a book. And when I read a book in my particular way, I am ecstatic. Because yes, I finished this hard thing that if I had to carry it around in a piece of pages, it would have killed me. You are entitled to that act of celebration, and you are entitled to determination. Determination in a way that, says, hey, this is hard for me. You can, using technology, using laws, using community. When I mean technology here is, if I'm defining technology as practicing self-attention, then I'm not limiting that idea of technology to gadgets. No, I'm extending that as any means that help you attend to your needs. And if, your community is the best way to do that, if a group study is your technology of dealing with, the way you go about your homework, that's technology. If you end up finding a good professor who advocates for you, says, you should actually try out and get this test done, because I feel you have that. And if you get this test, you might be able to get this, advantage in exams. That's a technology. Anything can be a technology that can help you attend to your needs. Because again, so many times that's the first thing that is robbed from us. The ability to ask questions and look inwards and figure out things and take time for ourselves. So the final thing is to ask, okay, when does one have time to do all of these things? When does one learn, or how does one go about figuring out what and practicing these types of technologies? Well, first and foremost is always pick your battles. Always choose one project at a time. When I when I was in Christ, the first problem that I faced was reading, the reading load. I would always skim through in my 11th and 10th grade PU by talking to other people and figuring out what the texts were saying. But when I would reach my bachelor's level, and it's a little more research oriented, a little more reading oriented, I realized I can't keep bugging people to read for me. So what I took up there was the one project that I set months to do was figuring out one particular tool of how to read better, how to listen better, and I took time for it. And as I kept doing that, I got better at it, finding different ways of going about it. Now I'm doing a PhD wherein I have to do a bunch of other productive work, more. I have to write diagrams, this and that, and I have to like separate a lot of ideas that are hard to come by, hard to summarize. So now my new project that I took up there is how do I use Google Drive better? How do I collect and put ideas in a cohesive way that is easy for me to understand? So, depending on your life, depending on your needs, depending on your circumstance, pick up one core trait that is hard for you. Google, figure out a solution and practice. Take time with it. It's not going to be an immediate solution, but it can be a part of you. Because the truth of the matter is your obligations, and by obligations I mean your larger institutional obligations. You might be studying, you might be at home, you might be working, you might be thinking. All of these things demand time from you, demand obligation from you. Well, your interests or these acts of technology, these acts of learning also take time. So if one is needed, the other is also as well. And sometimes figuring out a personal balance is it almost helps you, feed the other. When I take time off to practice, a particular tool, say I have like a day every Monday is when I sit down and I refurnish what are all the things that I learned and what are the things that I need to relearn, what tools am I using to do all the big tasks. I re-examine myself, and it's just that one day of the week, because it's very likely that I might get too engrossed in this technology and blah 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 blah. So I limit myself to that one time, but that is as important as all the other timetable things that I need to do, like going to class, teaching class, all these things. So the same way you block out time for obligations, you can block out time for your interest, for these experimental tools. And that way you are literally giving yourself a little bit more time, a little bit more importance, a little bit more care. And that way acts like advocating for your needs come from a more confident place, because now you're not defined by just your given label of dyslexia or dyscalculia. You are now advocating from a place of, oh yeah, I'm dyslexic, but I'm reading in this way. And now I'm asking you, because I'm already doing all the work, but I'm good at it now, in using this alternative method for this is what I need from you, this is what I'm giving you. You can negotiate better. Confidence comes from a place. And it's even small things like being able to share a text, a medium that other people are all enjoying, and now you have access to that medium as well. You deserve those small intermediate joys as well. So yeah, I think that's what my whole talk is about. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing. Yeah, I hope I was audible.
Thanks so much, Parikshith. Yeah, that was really great. I see a very different perspective of technology. Thanks so much for this. You highlighted how technology, is more of, practicing personal attention and as a means of, help, really, not just restricted to gadgets. And that I think that's, a very important way to reimagine it. So you spoke about how one could read differently using alternative methods, different method of speaking and using mind maps, audio reading methods, and also bringing about the concept of interdependence in care as well. Weaving that here as well. That was great. So thanks so much. And also the point that you stressed on how we can create that space within us, for our everyday acts of celebration and frustration. I think that's more important. That's also being kind to ourselves as well. So thanks so much for taking your time off and then sharing all of your thoughts. Right. So we have Gopi talking next, but before that, I think we'll take a short break for 5 minutes. Please do stay, here. Just a break for us to cool off and just to move around, and then we'll come back for Gopi's session, and then we can have Q&A. I've also typed in the feedback form link, so please do take some time to fill in that. So it's 7:13. Probably we can be back by 7:18. Stay tuned, please. I think we can now have the next speaker for the day. I know it's been a long day for all of us, and Gopi is here.
Hi, Chetan.
Yeah, hi, Gopi. Yeah, thanks. I can hear you. So just ping you, just a second. Yeah. All right. So we're here for the last session, and Gopi is going to talk about his experiences in the workplace and DEI practices. Let me introduce Gopi to all of you. Um, Hailing from God's own country, Kerala state in India, Gopi Mohan Venugopal is a manager, corporate services, business management, and global co chair for the Accessibility Network at LSEG. With over 12 years of diverse industry experience in various domains such as art and photography, hospitality, content production, learning and development, and service escalations, Gopi is skilled at managing global projects while building relationships across various groups and teams. In addition to his business experience, Gopi is passionate about driving projects and initiatives which would have direct impact to the business and well-being of employees as well as to mentor and lead by example. Gopi specializes in stakeholder management while also working towards creating awareness around diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Having studied and lived in the UK and widely traveled in India and abroad, Gopi likes to travel and backpack, write, and spend time with his pets in his free time. Thank you so much for taking your time off and agreeing to speak here. We're glad to have you. Over to you, Gopi.
Hi, Chetan. Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible to everybody.
I think you're not very loud. At least, yeah, not very loud.
Is it better?
Yeah, this is better.
Okay. Yeah. So good evening. I'm glad I'm the last person going because I've been running around the entire day. So I hope I can close things on a good note. So though I'm here to talk about best practices at work, I think it's important that you know my journey as well, in terms of where I started and where I am right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to probably take you all through a little bit, walk you through my journey, my life, and then close it off with how things are at the work and everything. So I'll touch upon a little bit around my childhood, how things were for me in terms of how I was diagnosed, how I was a different kid, and a little bit around my education and my teenage life, and then eventually coming on to work and some of the things that we do at office, and some of the things that actually worked for me on how to tackle things differently in general. So coming to my childhood, I was always a very different kid. I think I was not really fitting into the normal box of a regular child. So I was a rebel. I was bad at studies. I just didn't really do anything. And I remember my dad and mom used to be at the principal's office pretty much every single day, and it was embarrassing to say the least. So I think it was then that I kind of figured out that I've always had this trouble with numbers, anything with numbers or alphabets. It was difficult for me. It was difficult for me to keep them in my mind. It was difficult for me to remember them. It was difficult for me to read, and occasionally write as well. And there were times when I write in the 4-line book that you used to have back in school, I used to write like a doctor, almost like painting or drawing like a mountain and things like that. So it was very difficult for anybody else to understand what I wrote, but I perfectly understood it. So it was me trying to sort of juggle in a world of my own, while also being amongst people who didn't really understand me. And I don't think it's their fault, right? Because back in the day, and this was in 2000, I don't know, 1999 ish, between 1990s to about 2006. I think most people didn't even have those conversations around invisible disabilities or people being different and things like that. So it's perfectly fine because that's how things were back then. Even my parents, I remember when I went to college, I mean, when I went to school, I failed my eighth standard, and my teachers were like, let's put him into humanities, let's put him into arts, let's put him into something else. He might be a bad student, but and it was we didn't the term learning disability was not really a thing back then, and I kind of again I felt like a stranger in my own life. But there were hacks which I sort of devised for myself, which worked for me. For example, and I some of them I still do it. So I had trouble remembering numbers or anything. Anyone told me anything about numbers, it was very difficult for me to comprehend. One of the most important things was time. So time was a very, very difficult thing and a complex thing for me in my head. So if you are traveling to a native place and it took like 4 hours, someone told me 4 hours, I started getting anxious inside. And again, I do suffer from anxiety, but this is something which I didn't know as a kid. So I was suffering. I mean, I used to freak out and, kind of think that, okay, 4 hours, it's a long time. What am I going to do? What am I going to do in between? There's in between 4 hours, an hour has 60 minutes. 60 minutes has so many seconds. So it's very difficult for me. So what I used to do was, I absolutely love music, right? So every song, generally, on an average, a song used to be 3 to 5 minutes, right? So I used to have this old Walkman back in the days when we didn't have Spotify and things like that. So I used to have a Walkman with me all the time, and I used to play music. So for me, 3 songs used to be 15 minutes approximately. 6 songs approximately was half an hour. 12 to 13 songs was an hour. And that's how I used to calculate time, and that's how I used to sort of keep myself in check. So if you're going somewhere and took 1 hour, okay, I'll grab my headset on, probably listen to about 12 to 13 songs, and by then we'll be there. I also use music to keep my mood in check. So it all depends for me. If I'm in a very happy mood, I play music. If I'm in a very sort of a mood where I need some uplifting, I used to play like very soft music. And sometimes where I just wanted to jam my thoughts, where I kind of feel like, there's too much going on, I used to play music which I don't even like, but it used to be loud to a point where it used to jam my thoughts, which helped for me. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. It's a hack for anyone. I mean, people devise their own hacks, and you stick onto something which you find useful for yourself. And I also used to sketch, and this is something I used to love doing as well. Sketching and then sort of arranging my thoughts. Whatever I used to feel, I used to put it in a piece of paper, and mostly it used to be pencil sketching. So if I felt sad, it used to be quite dark. If I felt happy, it used to be all not colorful, but the pictures used to be better. So that was also something that helped me. Now, coming on to my school, I mean, that was my school and things like that, but coming on to my college, it was a very new experience for me, because I didn't want to do anything core numbers or core, development sort of stuff, or engineering or doctor or anything like that, because I felt like arts was my thing. So I went and joined a college in Coimbatore to do my undergrad in film and communication. And that's really where I kind of started figuring out who I was, and maybe not what I wanted to do, but I really started figuring out who I was. It kind of changed my life entirely, because that's when I figured out what photography was, and I got a camera. So anything and anytime, along with music, I had photography, where if I felt something, I used to take a picture that resonated with that feeling. If I wanted to communicate something which I couldn't tell someone, I used to take a picture and just show it to them. And sometimes they understood, sometimes they didn't. But the most important part was how it made me feel. So that was something different for me. And then I decided to major in photography, and I moved to England. I did my master's in documentary photojournalism. And so now I already had music and photography in my hand. And then I wanted a new challenge, and I added traveling into my bucket list. And I mean, I think through that 2-3 years, I just ended up being a dangerously extroverted person. And you put me in a room with 100 people, I'll blend in about 5 minutes. And I absolutely love that. I mean, just go to people, random strangers, talk to them, take pictures of them. And I used to work for a newspaper in England. It used to be a lot of fun. I mean, you used to communicate things, communicate difficult messages, communicate things which you may not agree with, but sort of battling your own demons in your head. And I think that's when through time, I started adding in hacks which really could help me get by my day. So music, photography, traveling, all of these were things which I liked. And I ended up traveling halfway around the world. I worked for Walt Disney. I worked on their ships. I backpacked a lot. I met some absolutely phenomenal people who taught me more about what life is. And that's where I got diagnosed with dyslexia. And suddenly, everything, my entire childhood just made sense. Because for a long time, I thought that I was just this very odd child who couldn't figure things out on my own. So everything sort of made sense when I was diagnosed with dyslexia in university. Now, the good part was, unlike in India, in England, and this was in 2006 or 2009, all this were already common, right? Because being different or having a disability, invisible disabilities were very, very common in England. And that was very commonly spoken about. It was very openly spoken about. Gender diversity, being a gay person, being a lesbian person, being a transgender, all of this was very openly spoken about. And I think those were the 4 years where I actually and truly and mostly lived my life as me. And that's where I learned the most that I could. And along with all this, it was a learning experience for me. I was learning things about myself. Then I moved back to India, and that's when I had my first taste with depression. And it was a very, very dark time, because a few things happened in my life, and my anxiety sort of kicked in. And again, I didn't know I had anxiety back then, even then. Anxiety was there, the dyslexia was there, work was there, and I was just trying to figure out myself. And I mean, it was a very bad time. And I mean, I openly tell people that I've even tried committing suicide 6 times, and it was a failed attempt 6 different times. And for whatever reason, I'm still here. I'm thankful to all those reasons, and probably my parents' prayer, my friends who prayed for me, who stood by me, that I'm here. I'm able to make change and drive cultural changes as well, right? So ever since I've been able to help people, anytime when someone goes through a problem, I try to sort of sit with them and not give them solutions, but just to make sure that they know that they're not alone. Because sometimes what happens is, and this is something which I tell my parents as well, sometimes all people like me, I mean, when I say people like me, someone who has an invisible disability, someone who suffers from dyslexia, depression, all we need is just to be heard. We don't need someone giving us solutions. We just want someone to just sit there and hear us. Because I'm someone who believes that acknowledgement is more important than acceptance, right? That's very, very important to me. You don't have to agree with me, but just acknowledge that this is what I'm going through, and that's fine. I'm at least that way. I know that I'm being acknowledged, right? So all this brought together through work. I've been doing a lot of stuff around work, which I'll just talk about. But 2 months back, I got diagnosed with ADHD as well. And my first thought was like, you know what, dyslexia, anxiety, ADHD. I'm like, it doesn't make any difference. It's nothing changes really. But the reason I got that diagnosis was, and the reason I'm telling that is because if you feel remotely that you have or you are being troubled with something, please make sure you get that tested. Please make sure, I know sometimes it's better not to know, but then it's always good to know, because that way you're provided with the right, I mean, you're equipped with the right things to help you deal with those situations, right? So I was fidgeting around with things. I used to have every time, even now when I talk, I need something in my hand. So even now when I talk, I have my earphone in my palm. So every 3 seconds, I keep clenching my earphone, or it could be a pen's cap. I couldn't sit still. I was just walking around during meetings. I sit down for 2 minutes. I stand up again, sit down. I started forgetting things which I did 10 minutes ago. And that's when I decided, okay, let me just get it tested. I got it tested, and it is what it is. I mean, and I one thing which I very proactively did was started taking therapy. And I'm someone who feels that everyone in the world should actively seek out help and take therapy. You might be perfectly fine, but it's always good to sort of unload those small things, right? It's good for you. It's good for your mental health. Now, coming back to work, so all my experiences put together, I wanted to sort of come into work and help people in terms of driving certain changes and driving cultural changes specifically. I wanted people to start talking about not just disability, invisible disabilities in particular, because when we talk about disabilities, what happens is everyone resonates to someone using a wheelchair or someone using a stick. That's what a disability is for them. So I wanted to sort of bring about those changes where, you know, people start talking about invisible disability. This happened when I was at work one day and I had an anxiety attack, and they thought that I didn't have food in the morning. And it's not, I'm not putting them at fault. It's just that they don't know about it, right? And that's when I realized we need to talk about these things more often. And we had an accessibility network. We were doing a lot at that time itself, right? But over the years, I'm so happy that we were able to sort of address a lot of things, and we were able to sort of strike those chords in people's mind and sort of make them think, okay, this is the right thing to do, this is the right thing to say. And what we've been predominantly doing is to raise awareness around all kinds of disabilities, but especially invisible disabilities. A couple of things which we were doing is, one is reverse mentoring. So mentoring in general is when a senior person mentors a junior person. But what we did was we flipped that around. We collaborated with the Pride community in our office, the Women's Network at our office, along with accessibility. All three of us came together, and we got some of our senior leaders paired up with people from within these three groups. It could be a women employee, it could be someone within the community, it could be someone who has a disability, or at times could be an ally as well. So we pair them up with senior leaders to sort of walk them through the challenges that they are facing, hear directly from them, so that they're able to make changes. And when I say make changes, it doesn't have to be big changes. It can be something as small as, okay, I'll hire one disabled person in my team next year, or I'll conduct so many awareness sessions in my group next year. I'll hire 2 women employees in my company, in my group next year. It could be very, very simple changes. And the results are phenomenal. I mean, some of the leaders, they took away a lot of learning, so many things that previously they could have ignored, or they might have not known. So a lot of conversations happened around things like that. We have inclusive, accessible washrooms. I mean, we have gender neutral washrooms. That's something which came out of all our DA&I conversations and meetings. Our events are inclusive, and we have interpreters and subtitles for most of our events where possible. All our events have subtitles. Interpreters, we are still trying to make interpreters available for all our events. We have inclusive workshops. So we have, I know one of my friends is there on the call, Kavya. So she's from Enable India. So we partner with Enable India quite a lot to have a lot of awareness sessions in office, out of which a couple of them recently, which we had was we brought in some of the two events. I'll highlight those two events because it was very emotional, very personal for me. So we brought in a lot of, I think about 40 blind candidates from Enable India. We took them to HAL Museum, and we had about another 40 or 60 candidates from London Stock Exchange who were graduates, management graduates. We paired them up with the blind candidates from Enable India. The task was to just walk them around the campus, show them the planes, make them touch the planes, and explain what they are seeing. Right. Some of the candidates, I mean, some of our employees after the session was teary-eyed. I mean, it really touched a chord, and it was really emotional for them. It was so emotional for me to just see that, just witness that. And we actually had another event 2 days back where it was called an inclusive screening, a movie screening, where we played the movie Barfi. And there were a few people, I mean, we again had candidates from Enable India who were blind. And then we had our employees. While the movie was playing, our employee was explaining what was happening on the screen. And again, I mean, I don't know about the others. I cried. I was there just for the last 30 minutes, and I was just emotional for me, way too emotional. You should have just seen when someone explains. There was this one candidate who was just laughing and just smiling away just by hearing what they were hearing, right? And that's the kind of difference that we want to make in the corporate industry, right? We want to sensitize our workforce to think about a better and more inclusive future. Now, if you ask me, will this happen tomorrow? Will this happen? Can we achieve this through our generation? Maybe not. Can we achieve this through the next generation? Probably not. Probably then the generation that follows after that might get things right. And I'm happy because I'd like to think that, okay, I carved the path for that to happen. Right? It might have taken 50, 60 years, but I laid the stepping stone for that to happen, right? And that's very, very important. Digital accessibility, that's something which we really take seriously. We have a lot of an array of softwares which people with disabilities and invisible disabilities can use. I'm also trying to sort of bring up, art has really helped me personally. So I'm trying to sort of bring in art and communication together and help our employees, especially our leaders, to sort of give them an overview of how you can communicate better through art. So I've already started talking with an organization who can come in and bring in their autistic children to teach our leaders how to communicate better with art, right? Now, it's all about thinking differently. It's all about doing things differently. But in the end, it's just about not just wanting to fit in, right? Because I mean, after all, I don't think any of us are different. Someone who has a disability versus someone who doesn't, I don't think we are any different. If you ask me personally, most of the people in the world, and if you start testing for disabilities, almost all of us will have some disability or the other, right? So it's all about seeing the world a little differently, seeing the world with a lot of compassion, just being empathetic to people. Now, a couple of things, and I'll wind things off. What's helped me personally in my journey through when I was in school till now, one is journaling. I always write. I used to write letters to my grandma who passed years ago. So every time I was sad, every time I was anxious, I used to write a letter to her. And I used to just keep it somewhere. But the fact that I was just writing it felt like it made me feel like I was talking to her. I used to write letters to myself. Sometimes I still do that. I mean, I still write letters to myself saying that, you know what, it's okay. It's fine. You're frustrated. It's fine. You're not happy with something. It's okay. It's in the end, you're just human. It's perfectly fine just to be yourself. I started learning things which is absolutely which are things which I thought I could never do previously. Out of which one was I've gone and booked myself a motorcycle. Funny thing is I don't even know how to ride a motorcycle. So the motorcycle will come in 4 months. So I have 4 months to learn how to drive a motorcycle. So that's the target I'm setting for myself. I have 6 cats. I had 10, 3 of them passed. So I have 6 cats now. I volunteer with Charlie's Animal Rescue Center on weekends. Gives me a lot of joy. Keeps my mental health in check. I do a lot of gardening. Just got myself 3 kilos worth of tomatoes. So if anyone wants tomatoes, please get in touch. I take therapy very actively, and that's something which I would encourage everyone to do. And most importantly, something which is very close to my heart is I travel. I still do that occasionally, or at least once a month. I just go to the trains app or the planes, whatever plane app is there. I just get the first flight or the first train out to wherever that goes, within India, obviously. And then, I mean, I just travel, make friends, meet new people, take pictures and everything. Now, I just want to close out with a very, very thoughtful quote. Someone recently asked me, how do you want yourself to be remembered, right? And it was a very tough question for me to answer. Now, I don't know if you all heard about Maya Angelou. She's an American poet, a very, very good one. There was a quote. There was a quote from her. I'm not going to explain it because everything that I want to say about that question is in that 2 lines. So the quote goes like this: I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I hope everyone can use this to sort of build on and just spread the love. I think that's the best way to put it. So thank you very much for giving me the time to talk, and thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Chetan.
Thanks so much, Gopi, for that beautiful, quote, and ending that with a thoughtful one. Thanks so much, and also for highlighting so many aspects of your personal journey and your professional journey, and the way you've made, the workspace more accessible and inclusive. Starting from your own personal journey of how time perception can be seen differently, right, understood differently, and the hacks that you mentioned. And I think an important aspect of being heard that you mentioned resonates a lot with all of us. So thanks so much. And specifically about the changes that you've been actively involved in workplace, bringing the cultural change and looking at disabilities beyond the physical disabilities, and including invisible disabilities, right? And some of the initiatives such as reverse mentoring that you mentioned, collaboration with other groups. I think they're really fascinating. I think these are some of the things that we can think of and really use that in our occupational and workspaces as well. So thanks so much for taking your time off. All right, so we are now at the end of our workshop. So we'll open the session for question and answer. So we have a couple of questions in the chat box as well. But if you have any questions, please do unmute yourselves. Let us know your name, and then you can ask your questions to our speakers.
Hello. Yeah, I have one question about the learning capabilities of mild autism kids, like how they can cope up with. Starting from the childhood, like. Yeah, we had a discussion about ADHD kids who can cope up with the learning capabilities, who can yeah, who can gain more knowledge from other schools, yeah, about this one. But I want to know about learning capabilities, how learning capabilities can be increased for mild autism kids also.
Would any of the speakers would like to take that up? Yes, please, Priyank. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Funny. So I think there are a lot of special educators here, so I'm not going to overstep on their shoes. But I think the best option is early intervention. Is to sort of get them into both occupational therapy as well as speech therapies, and also find a special needs school that would work towards building, communication skills, as well as working on their both their fine motors, as well as looking at academics in a different way. There are a lot of schools across the city as well as the country that are sort of working towards making learning fun, making learning more vocational, making it more practical. And autistic kids enjoy that, especially with the fact when it comes to their sensory needs. There is a lot of a lot of things that are available to sort of create an environment that is suitable for autistic children. As And I think lastly is also to be able to if your child, or if the child you are using as
Yeah.
reference is a non-speaker, then there are also technologies that are available to assist them in their need.
Okay, I have one more question in this regard. Like, will you suggest some good school in Bangalore for the special
um,
needs?
there are a couple, but I would suggest Vrindavan Education Trust, where some of the teachers are here as well. I work at a school called Linguaphile Skills Hub. I'll drop both their details on the chat so you can take that from there.
Thanks, Priyank. Yes, we have a question. Thank you, Mr. Pani, for the question.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
does anyone else have any question?
Chetan, may I just add a word for Mr. Funny here?
Oh,
I'm
yes,
Rajni here.
yes.
Yeah. Mr. Funny, so while you're working with your child, or
Yeah.
whichever school is working with your child, I think as parents, as educators, all of us need to keep it very consciously in our minds that we may not see incremental changes. You've started working with the child now, you may or may not see progress or so called development in your child for the next 3 to 6 to 7, 8 months. It will happen, and it is a constant process, but sometimes to see that tangible progress will take time. So I just wanted to add that word, because we've been here for some time, so wanted to share that. Thank you, Chetan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
ma'am.
Rajni.
Thank you for that. Right. So, yes, we'll take in questions. I'm going to again paste the feedback form, the link to the feedback form. Please do take some time to fill that in. And you can also connect with our speakers as well. If you can mention that in the feedback form, we'll get in touch with you and you can connect with them as well. We'll take a question from Kavya, who initially asked it to Aditya. Um, Please answer the different kind of self-advocacy tools that you use that could be beneficial for other people with disabilities. Aditya, do you want to take that up?
My apologies.
Okay. I think once Aditya is back, maybe we can take that up, or we can get back to Kavya probably via email. We also have another question for Shreya and Puneet by George Sebastian. While societal pressure is one of the reasons that parents don't send their children to special school, there are pros and cons of the child being in a special school versus being in mainstream school. What would be a set of guidelines that can help someone to pick the right learning environment? If someone decide to go to special school, how should they plan their transition to mainstream, as it is important when you go to higher education and go to a mainstream job? So would anyone like to take it? This is for Shreya and Puneet. Maybe.
Yes, yes, sir, I would like to take it up. I think more than the guidelines, the first important thing is that first thing you should know is whether the child is in a position or not to go to the mainstream schooling, because what happens is it depends on the child's capability. So first is that. Second is there is no set of guidelines, but the child should be mentally prepared. That there'll be a difference in the special education. I mean the mainstream and the special education school or the special education environment. So that is one thing the child should be prepared for, because if the child is really not prepared, then it becomes difficult for the child to adjust in a mainstream school. And what kind of environment should be chosen for education, I think it really depends on the child's needs. Like for example, for a child with special needs, when you make the child sit with 50-60 students, it becomes very difficult for the child. The child will feel lost, because that's what I experienced when I was studying in a normal school. But then when I shifted to Brindavan, there was a drastic change. I felt that I was heard. I felt that there was somebody who would help me out. So it depends on the child and its capabilities. Yes, if the child is shifting from a special school to a mainstream college or job, first thing is they should be mentally prepared. Like how is the outside world and all that. So they should be mentally prepared and counseled by both the school as well as the parents. I think that would really help the child or the individual to mix or get gelled to the mainstream society better. So yeah.
Thanks, Shreya. Puneet, would you like to take this up?
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes. So it's a very subjective uh, question, but as like Shreya said, I would just like to add from my own perspective that uh, the kind of mental exhaustion that we go through, in the like what we call mainstream schools, like it's tiring. But but talking about personally about me, because I can only talk about myself. So like I have a I was taking care a lot taking in a lot of stress, and I was academically I was good. So that was like that really made me tired in my adulthood. Like this tiredness is real. It's the masking and the hiding that I was going through that made me really uh, really like kind of uh, I would say exhaustion again, and it was difficult. So we need to look at that how a kid is like it's feeling about it, and kid may not be able to express themselves easily. So that's a bit tricky. But at times, we have pros and cons of both the things, because when we are going to transition to like to the mainstream, it is going to be challenging for that. But with empathy and love, I think that can be taken care of, because once, like as Gopi was saying, that acknowledging is really important. With acknowledgement we will reach acceptance and a harmony as well. But acknowledging that the kid is having a kind of a some kind of self awareness, that it's okay to feel that way, I think that can make whole lot of difference. So I think please talk to the kid, and just spend a lot of time with the kid, because I think the parental love is really powerful here. Thank you.
Thanks, Puneet. I think Gopi has something to add on. Please go ahead.
No, very quick thing, and Puneet really struck a chord. And I agree with Puneet and Shreya both, because this is a very, very subjective thing. What I may see as right may not be right for Puneet, or what Puneet may see as right may not be right to Shreya. So in the end, just as how we have that statement that when you approach a disabled person, don't just approach them and start helping out of the blue. Ask them first whether they need help. So I know when it's smaller children, it's very difficult, but when if the child is in their teens, it's important, like Puneet mentioned, to be with the children, understand as a parent. Sometimes, like I said, all they want is for you to just listen, right? And that itself solves a lot of the problems. Finding the right school, the right mode of education is way ahead. There's a lot of barriers to cross to get there, and that is a very, very good option. I'm not saying that's not a good option, because you have trained professionals who can help people. But more often than not, what happens, and I've seen this also, where you might have parents and they don't do it deliberately, but they think that, okay, the problem is solved once the child is taken from a normal institution and put into an institution which has trained professionals who can help the child. But it doesn't stop there, right? There's a lot of work which needs to go in after as well. So it's important that you talk to the children, you talk to the child, understand. So when I was offered to be put in a different institution, I was very adamant and I said no. But that's just a personal choice, because for me personally, I wanted to still be around within the normal construct of what education was. Maybe that was me challenging myself. Maybe that was me wanting to still fit in. But again, it's my choice, right? So just as it is for me, the child has a choice. So it's important you talk to the child first, right? But I agree 100% with what Puneet and Shreya just mentioned.
Thanks, Gopi. Parikshith, yes, please.
Hi. Just a very quick add on, and this is very much in continuing the advice given by the other speakers. I really enjoyed stressing the subjectivity of making such a decision, especially as a parent. And it's important to admit something that I think isn't often admitted. I think while we as people who are talking about the need for more attention to neurodivergent, care and all that stuff, and think it's important for us to also admit the difficulty faced by parents or faced by people in charge of these institutions. And I think one thing advice that I wish I gave my mom, and I do thank her very much for this, is inefficiency can be maybe not countered, but it can be balanced by sincerity. When you are a parent and you're learning about these new things on your own and you're struggling to make hard decisions for your child, and if these decisions are coming from a place of sincerity, even if you're, for lack of a better term, and I want to use crude language here, even if you're screwing up as a parent and you're scared as hell and you're getting frustrated and all, the truth of the matter is, if it is still coming from a place of love, if it's still coming from a place of genuine care and you're communicating with that child, a lot of the time the child can clock that. Even if the parent is not coming, is struggling with the decisions and whatnot. So inefficiency, if you're able to communicate sincerity, the child feels, often, secured and capable of growing, depending on the inefficiencies of the institution. Yeah, this is just, in the domain of making decisions like this. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Parikshit. That was quite relevant. Yeah. All right, so it's 8:03. I think we'll wrap this session up. It was absolutely wonderful to have our speakers, talk about so many of their experiences with all honesty. I think these are some of the conversations that we don't find in books, some of the conversations that we cannot find otherwise. So thanks so much for this lovely time. And also the participants, thanks so much for staying for 3 hours, and that's so difficult. I can imagine myself facing so much difficulty staying continuously 3 hours. But thanks so much for being there. Just another reminder: please do fill the feedback form because that will be very helpful, and we'd like to hear your thoughts as well. This is absolutely amazing. So, although we spoke about learning disability, advocacy, we also have to be we have to acknowledge that we also spoke about neurodivergence and the different aspects of neurodivergence within that, about being sensitive to language, being sensitive to the needs of all of us. So thanks. Hope to have this kind of conversations more so that we can really, have everything, without having any difficulties. So thanks so much for this.
Thank you, Chetan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chetan.
Thanks. I'd like to thank.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank our sign language interpreters, Preeti Sapra and Mr. Arun C. Rao, for also being with us and interpreting, and also Dr. Renuka for helping us with this. And finally, I'd like to again thank Dr. Shubha Ranganathan, my supervisor and associate professor of Psychology, Department of Liberal Arts, IIT Hyderabad, and also thank Department of Liberal Arts for this opportunity. Thanks. Hope you all have the rest of this night. Spend it well and have a great week ahead. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.